We all are gonna die. 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 Why don't we help each other prepare for it? Without death there could not be life. I'm talking about end of life conversations, conversations about the end of life. Death and dying, grief and loss, conversations about the end of life.
In World War II, she was one of the women that came forward and took a job, and she raised 5 kids. But what she wouldn't do is accept help when my grandfather was going through Alzheimer's. She refused to
Right.
put him in a home. And so she was working full time as an accountant or bookkeeper, and she was taking care of him for 2 years.
Wow.
And even though she had family very close by, she was not asking for help. I remember one time she asked for help when he had fallen and couldn't get up. And that's what they think contributed to her early death is because of stress of caregiving.
Welcome to this episode of End of Life Conversations. I'm Reverend Wakil David Matthews.
And I'm the Reverend Mother Ana Luisa Armendariz. In this podcast, we share people's experiences with death and dying, grief and loss, and the end of life.
We really enjoy all of our excellent and insightful guests. They generously tell their stories with compassion and wisdom. We also want to thank Wakil and Wendy's children and partners for that wonderful introductory song. Okay, let's get started.
Welcome, everyone. We're really happy to have all of you here, and especially our wonderful guest today, Christine Gautreaux. She's an MSW, and she also holds a bachelor's and master's degree in social work. And she is a professional speaker, a coach, an author, and an entrepreneur. I was referred to her by my wife, who went to an event with her, an interplay event. So she also does that. She is the co-author of Still Point, a caregiver's playbook to find ease and to take a deep breath and reclaim joy, and also Women Connected in Wisdom Stories and Resources Rooted in the 8 Dimensions of Wellness, Volumes 1 and 2. She believes in the power of body wisdom and somatic play to help heal trauma and live our best lives.
Christine is dedicated to the pursuit of play, joy, art, and social justice. Christine's superpowers include connecting people, helping folks manifest their dreams, standing up against injustice, and using art to make a difference in the world. Christine coaches professional caregivers, activists, and artists to maintain a balance in their self-care. Christine is the co-host of the Women Connected in Wisdom podcast and the co-founder of the Women Connected in Wisdom community. She is currently serving as the Integrity and Innovation Coordinator of Interplay that Wakil's wife has shared with us. So welcome, Christine.
Thank
That's
you
one of her favorite
much.
things to do.
Oh,
One
I
of my
love
wife's favorite things.
Mine too.
Well, we're really glad to have you. Thank you again for making it. And we always like to begin by learning more about our guests by asking the question, when did you first become aware of death?
I was thinking about this after listening to some episodes of y'all's podcast, and I grew up in a small farm in Texas. So, being connected to the earth and cycles of life, probably very early in my life about animals and things like that. But when I think about people, what I think about is I lost my maternal grandparents when I was 14. And my grandfather, Mahoney, was an Irish immigrant. He was first generation Irish immigrant, and he had Alzheimer's before they called it Alzheimer's. They were still, it was right at the time that they were learning and studying and diagnosing. And it was a long, slow journey for our family. And he passed away when I was 14. And that was like the first major person in my life. And then about 7 months later, I was 7 months later, my grandmother, his wife, dropped dead from a brain aneurysm.
Wow.
And it was heartbreaking. The first one, we were well prepared, right? It was we were talking about it, we were supporting. But at the time, my grandmother, well, first of all, she was just incredible. My daughter, who is graduating from college next week, she was talking about our family history. And I was like, I wish you had known her, because she worked in World War II, she was one of the women that came forward and took a job, and she raised 5 kids. But what she wouldn't do is accept help when my grandfather was going through Alzheimer's. And back then, there weren't good facility. She refused to
Right.
put him in a home. And so she was working full time
Mm.
as an accountant or bookkeeper, and she was taking care of him for 2 years.
Wow.
And even though she had family very close by, she was not asking for help. I remember one time she asked for help when he had fallen and couldn't get up. And that's what they think contributed to her early death, is because of
Yeah, yeah,
stress of caregiving. So
yeah.
those 2 deaths within such a short time really made an impact on my life. And the other random piece of that whole thing was when my grandmother died, my Aunt Joan, who was my person, and I lost her recently, she was backpacking across Europe. She was in Ireland. And it was back when, well, I mean, she was just a trailblazer to start with, but she's backpacking by herself in Europe, and she would meet somebody and go, like, there was not a set itinerary. There was not a, and
Love
so
it.
we had her destination of, she had met these folks in the hostel she was in and where she was headed. And we couldn't get a hold of her for 2 or 3 days. And so it was part of that dying process because my grandmother was on life support, and they weren't going to release her until they reached it was a whole part of the business of dying, especially in
Yeah,
America. And so
yeah.
that really, I think I was 14 when that happened, and it just really made an impression on me, and getting your affairs in order, like the whole thing. And really, the book, when in the introduction, when you talked about Still Point, the playbook for caregivers, that's my why for being a co-author on that book, is because I knew, like, being a caregiver can take you out if you're not
Yes.
taking care of yourself
Absolutely.
at the same time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's so important. I want to make sure and get that book into our Grievers library that we have here in the Northwest. Yeah, it'd be a great
Yeah.
book for that. And we've talked about, yeah, the issue of caregiving.
So, yes, I love this impression you had at the tender age of 14, the impression that end of life care is both important for the caregiver and important to get your stuff in order, right? So, it obviously made an impact on your life, because here we are talking about death and dying and Still Point. So, can you give us a little bit more of that impression and how it moved through your whole life? How death has just been a foundational piece?
Well, sure. I think, it made a difference into my career, into becoming a social worker, and really how systems impact us, like our family system and how we relate to the world and each other. And I was thinking about it as I was thinking about coming on and talking with y'all today. And I was thinking about, even at a young age, I was an informal death doula for folks.
Mm,
Like, people, with the combination of my spirituality and my social work and the fact that I can talk about death, it's one of those things that a lot of people can't. So I was trained as a clinical therapist. I don't practice as one. I practice as a coach, and I do other things. I was really naive when I went through that training, and
mm.
I thought, oh, therapists can talk about everything, because I tend to be able to talk about everything, like death and sex and finances. And so many, even therapists, can't talk about if they haven't done their own work, if they haven't
Yeah.
done their own work around death and dying and grieving. And so I was in college, and one of my classmates in social work, she was a non traditional student. She was older, and she didn't have health insurance. And she ended up having a brain tumor. And by the time she got it diagnosed, it was too late. And I just remember that was also one of my first experiences with hospice, and how when hospice doesn't work well, it impacts, and when it does work well. So, because of who I was in her life, and I was in a baby social worker at the time, I kind of took over that role. And then I was her unofficial death doula. And I just realized the impact of having and I don't really like labels of good or bad or things like that, but really having a good death or having a plan or having the support you need towards end of life,
Yeah.
how big of a difference it can make
Right.
for everybody involved.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you don't want to judge what that end of life looks like, neither good nor bad,
Right.
but we don't
Yeah.
want to stay neutral. But
Right.
what I hear from you right now is that it worked.
Right.
Your service to this woman worked for her. And what we always want is like the care that we have for others will work for them and the caregivers for that matter, right? So
Right.
it is all going to look different. So you stepped up.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I think so much of that is being able to have the conversations.
Right.
I think it's being able to ask the person who's in the dying process and the family. Because,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Well, I do know. It's rare that everybody is able to talk about it and that
Right.
everybody and the different parts of where they are in their grief and loss. And, well, a good example, I mentioned my Aunt Joan, who, love my Aunt Joan. So in the last 2 years, I've lost 7 family members.
Wow.
And my Aunt Joan was one of them. And my Aunt Joan had triple negative breast cancer. And she went through traditional treatment. She was diagnosed during COVID. She wanted to go an alternative route, but we did all the research and she's like, so she did chemo and radiation, was cancer free maybe 6 months, maybe 9 months, and then it came back.
Mm.
And she called me and she said, they're giving me 6 to 9 months to live without chemo or radiation, and they're tacking on maybe 3 to 6 months with chemo and radiation. And she said, and I don't care if it's vain or not, but I am not dying bald. And I said, okay, you get a choice, right? You get a choice. She had some explicit expletives and cuss words in there too. But I said, what do you want to do? My Aunt Joan was the traveler. She was the one, when she was young, she would save up all her money and then she would give her 2 weeks notice. And that's important for later in the story. She would give her 2 weeks notice and then she would travel to all over the world until she ran out of money. And then she'd go get another job and she'd travel again. It's what she loved to do. And she would wander. And so when when we were talking, I said, what do you want to do? And she said, well, you when you get news like this, you think my bucket list, right? And she said, but the reality is I feel like crap. Like I really don't want to do anything, but I want to travel and I want to go see your mom. At this point, my mom was in Colorado and she was in Texas. And because I had moved my parents within a year for my dad's treatment, who was also in the process of dying. So I said, all right, I'm coming to get you. She said, you don't have time to come get me. I know your schedule. I said, well, obviously I don't have time not to come get you. So I'm coming. And so I flew into Dallas, Fort Worth, and she picked me up and we started our journey towards Colorado. Now, this is a trip you can make in one day. You can make it in 2 days if you're taking your time. I think we took 4 or 5 because what we did is we got the app Roadside America. I don't know if y'all know this app. It's where you put in where you're traveling and it tells you where the funky and cool art is along the way. And it tells you how far off your journey you could go to see it. And
Love
people rate it and stuff like that. So we put in Roadside America and our goal was to wander and to see art and to have discussions and to talk along the way. And we met artists and it was fabulous. And it was it's also interesting because my aunt at the time was working at the Botanical Garden in Fort Worth. And she was like, she just went back and forth about quitting her job or not quitting her job or that she had to give her 2 weeks notice. And I'm like, why do you have to give 2 weeks notice? You have a terminal, like you have an end date. Like, what are we doing here? But it was part of those discussions, right? Like, because it was part of her work ethic that you give 2 weeks notice. And I'm like, well, if you love it and you want to stay there for 2 weeks, yeah. But if not, like, I think they would understand.
Life is short now.
Right?
Let's go.
Right? Absolutely. So it's just funny the things that get stuck in our head. But with my Aunt Joan, I was the one that could talk to her about death and dying. She wouldn't talk to anybody else about it. Her siblings were a lot in denial about it. And when I would bring up hospice, she'd yell at me. And then and we'd have a discussion about it and she'd hang up on me and she'd call me back and then she'd say, I hope you're okay. And I'm like, no, I'm good. Like, this is part of my work in the world and part of these discussions. And so the day that the doctor brought up hospice, she didn't yell at the doctor. So I felt like I had done a really good job prepping her
Your
for
foundational
this,
pieces, your
right?
foundational conversations. Yeah.
Right, about palliative care and hospice care and what it looked like. And yeah, and we had the conversations of, what do you want? Right? What do you want your death to look like? What do you want? And she had 5 things. I loved we had so many conversations, but at the end it got down to this. I don't want to be in pain. I want to keep going. I want to keep working. I don't want to be bedridden. I want to keep going. I want to cack off. Those were her words at home, like
Cack
her
off?
brother did. Cack off, she called it. I want to cack off at home. Let's see. I want to go at home. I don't want to be in pain. I want it to be. I want to keep going until the end. I know there was more than that. And then she didn't want us to see her that way at the end. And I had trouble with that one. Oh, I know. The 5th was she didn't want to be alone, because I had planned to be with her, and she was very clear. I don't want you to see me this way. And I'm like, Aunt Joan, like, this has been a part of my work and who I am for years. And she's like, I know, but I want to be the fun, outgoing, adventurous aunt. I'm like, well, you're always going to be that to me.
Yeah. And she's obviously still going to die as an adventurer.
Right, absolutely. So I was actually out in your part of the world, Keel. I was out at Vashon Island, and I was doing an interplay event on Vashon Island. And she knew my travel schedule down to almost the minute, because when I had dropped her back off after our grand adventure, we had adventured up to Colorado. I had left her there with my mom for a week, and I had gone and facilitated a retreat. And then I had come back, and we had wandered our way back, which included a hysterical story in Turkey, Texas, but that's for another podcast. So I had said, do you want me to stay? And this was July. And she's like, no. And at this point, like, we were 1 month into the 3 to 6 months. And she's like, no, you have this busy travel schedule this summer. I want you to go. I want you to travel. I want you to send me pics of the weird art along the way, and we'll talk every day. So Vashon Island was my last stop on Labor Day before I was heading back to Texas, and I was going to work from Texas and just be with her. And on Friday, I got to the island, and I got a text from her that I knew was a goodbye text. And I burst into tears. And my friend and colleague that was with me is like, are you okay? And I'm like, oh, my Aunt Joan is slipping out before I make it to Texas. And she's like, how do you know? And I said, part of it is I've been doing this long enough. Like, this text is so different than any other text she's ever sent me. And it was a beautiful text. It was about how proud she was of me and how well I had created my life. And I woke up the next morning to the news that she had crossed in the middle of the night. And she got everything she wanted. Her friend stopped by to check on her that night and knew she was having trouble, so stayed. The family was not with her. She'd sent her sister off for the weekend. She was not in pain. It was literally almost 2 months to the date that she had gotten the 3 to 6 months diagnosis. She had said, I don't want to linger. And so she created what she wanted, right? I'm like, how can you be mad about that? You got everything you wanted, right?
That's so great. Wow.
That's so phenomenal. And the 2 things: you were ready to have all these conversations to prepare her to actually articulate what she wanted and kind of manifest it. And then the second part of this is the phenomenal experience of both her death and you witnessing this, even from afar. It was, you bore witness to this.
It was powerful. It was powerful.
Yeah.
And I was able to prep my mom, who's her older sister, because I called my mom, and I was just, because the siblings were like, oh, this, and I was like, oh, they're in denial, right? And I called and said, hey, Mom, I just need you to know, Aunt Joan's she's not hanging out. I think she's made her decision, and I think she's going sooner than later. And she goes, I think so too. So I think out of all the siblings, she was more prepared. Like, I'd had a little bit of gentler conversations with the other siblings, but they really didn't want to hear it.
Yeah.
Everybody has their different way of processing.
They do.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
it's so hard to me. Like, I just got an email this weekend from somebody who wants to meet with me, who said, I live with my child, and my child does not want to discuss my death, and has actively told me, that they will just shut me down if I go there. And I was
Mhm.
like, wow, like who does this? I'm glad that we're in the world that we can hold that space for folks because it's so
Right.
needed.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah. This is our goal and vision for this whole thing that we're doing, and it's really been so rewarding to hear from so many people about
Mm-hmm.
the kind of work that you're doing, the kind of work that others are doing, just to try to bring this up, make it a conversation that everybody has. So,
Mm-hmm.
thank you for your work. Yeah, and thanks for the stories. It was really fun.
Aunt
I would have
Joan,
loved. Yeah, I would
Aunt
have loved to met her.
Joan, okay, I have to say this one other thing about Aunt Joan because I have to tell she was such a she was so incredible. She taught people how to skydive. She was a master jump master. So for my coming of age trip, she flew me out to California and taught me how to jump out of a plane over
I
the
love
over
her.
the Mojave Desert. Like she
Mm,
was just well, this is what I say about her to folks. She expanded my world.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like
Yeah.
everyone's world she touched. Yeah,
Right?
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Very cool. Well, tell us more about your work, what you're doing now, and like interplay, other things that you're working on. We'd like to hear more about that.
Thank you. Yeah. It kind of depends on the day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think the main gist of my work is I uplift people's voices,
Mm,
especially people that are in the margins.
Mm-hmm.
And I am a big believer in uplifting their work and their life. And whether that's through podcasting or stories or interplay or coaching, it is one of my privileges in this world to walk alongside people and
yeah,
to help get the word out about who they are and what they do
Mm-hmm.
and mirror. You said earlier about mirroring back to each other, like mirror their awesomeness. I am
Mm-hmm.
just always in awe of how many incredible, people would say ordinary people, like just
yeah.
how incredible people are.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what I get to do is I get to talk to those folks on the podcast in Women Connected in Wisdom. I get to help write their stories and publish their stories. I get to walk alongside a lot of artists and write books with them and play and interplay right now is it's been my love for a long time. Like I said earlier, I was trained as a clinical social worker and I was introduced to interplay through Sheila K. Collins. And when I hit interplay, like it is a somatic way of being. And we use movement and storytelling and voice to help people
Mm-hmm.
access their wisdom. Like, that's it. I'm like, here I am, because one of the things I love is community social work. And so I do groups with different folks. And like one of my groups is with women who are transitioning out of homelessness and using interplay and tools. When we talk about death, we talk about
Mm-hmm.
really hard subjects. We do it in a way that is fun. And it's hard to say that, like we play with tough subjects.
Yeah,
And
I
but
love
one of the
that.
reasons is because we're in our bodies
Mm-hmm.
and we can. And we're
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
aware of when it's too much or we have tools
Mm-hmm.
when it becomes too much to release it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I get to do. I get to play and create.
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to say, I think you said it's weird to say fun. And I'm going to just like add to that, that it's not necessarily like for people who want to poo poo that death can't be fun. It's adding lightness to the
Right?
conversation, adding
Yeah.
like an openness and not a
Yep.
constriction, right? So that it, it could feel ample and restorative rather than like fricative
And
and tense.
nurturing,
Right. Right.
right?
So,
Yeah, yeah,
yes.
Right?
yeah.
Absolutely. And I've had the privilege of taking this work into prisons and other places, and places that when you say constrictive are the most. I was in a maximum security prison in Georgia one time and I was doing interplay with lifers. These are people
Mm,
that probably will not get out,
Mm-hmm.
and we were doing interplay and I had facilitated a one-hand dance, which is a form we do. And then one of the things we do in interplay is we do things and then we notice. So I've
Mm-hmm.
done interplay with folks who are in the dying process. And then you notice, you check in with your body, like what is happening, right? And this lifer notices after this 1 minute, 2 minute form, I felt freedom.
Mm-hmm.
wow.
And to be able to bring that experience to somebody who was in one of the most constrictive places, like it took me 6 locked gates to get to the classroom. That, and the same thing when working with folks who are, struggling with dementia or Alzheimer's or in the dying process, to be able to give moments of freedom or joy or going to another place in their imagination is beautiful. Like it's such a
It's so
gift,
beautiful.
right?
Yeah, so good. Thank you. That's beautiful. I really appreciate that. Yeah.
So
I'll have to join Wendy one of these times.
Yes,
Yeah.
please. You would love it.
I'll have to find out if there's something in Denver.
Oh, you bet. Because you know what? I'm there often. And
Oh,
actually,
good.
Denver has shout out to my Denver interplay leaders. They gather the wild and interplay Colorado.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Gather the Wild.
They're an incredible group of people.
All right. I
Cool.
got to go
We'll
check them out.
Yeah, this will all be in our notes for podcast notes so
I
people
love
can
it.
look it up too. Yeah. Very good.
All right.
Thank you.
So, with this supporting and opening, heart affirming work that you do, what do you find are your biggest challenges?
My biggest challenges. I love that. Remembering to do my practices to stay grounded.
Yeah.
In the times we are currently living, I feel like I've needed to double or triple my practice to really stay grounded. People are hurting. People are hurting and resources are going away. And so really staying rooted and grounded so I can show up fully present. And then I think one of the biggest challenges is the clearing of that energy. Because I really do have practices that clear energy and even good stuff. Like sometimes it's the good stuff I have to clear because I'll be laying in bed just grinning at the ceiling because it was so good. And it's like, you have to sleep. So I think those clearing practices and being able to come back to center, especially with big and challenging things, because everybody I know is going through 3 to 5 big and challenging things right now.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I just read an article about the noticeable difference in both mental health and deaths happening because of the crazy, insane government that's trying to, this new authoritarian government that's doing so many crazy things every day. It's overwhelming for anybody. And I totally agree with you. I love that earlier you were sharing about the laughter and and the joy and we often say tears are sacred here and laughter is sacred here. And to celebrate that is part of the work we do, I think, is celebrate both and make sure people know that that's a sacred thing. Thank you. We don't apologize. We thank.
Right? Well, and it's true, and it is, and not to minimize this work, y'all. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
anybody that has been at somebody's bedside when they have crossed, it's big work.
It is.
It's powerful work. I'm coming up on the anniversary of my dad's death, which was this time last year. And I was in, where was I at? I wasn't in Denver. I was in Aurora at the Veterans Hospital there. We had moved my dad there for care after a catastrophic fall. And I got the call after one of his last hospitalizations. I had been there and then I had to go do something. And then I got the call that when he was coming, we thought he was improving, but when he was coming out, he was going to come out in hospice. And we knew it was getting time. And so I knew what my role was. Like I just knew. And I got there and my sister was like, "I'm so glad you're here. I cannot have this conversation." And I said, "Okay." And my dad was having dementia. So we were having we had wanted to talk to him about dying, but also he was going in and out of dementia and we weren't sure that it would get stuck in there the wrong way. And
no fear.
Right. And so my job for the last 2 weeks of his life was to hold his hand and tell him it was okay to die.
Wow.
And whoo, y'all, can I just tell you, like, I mean, I do this as part of my work in the world, and I have done it with numerous people, but when it is your daddy, like, that is a whole nother story. But we laughed, we sang, we cried, we played. one of the funniest stories from that time was I would play different music for him because I am a big believer in music and stories and sensations. And I was playing country music one time because we're originally from Texas, and Jose Cuervo came on. And he's like, whoo, I could use some tequila. And by this point, he was barely eating anything. Like I was like, really, Dad? That's how we're going to go out. Okay, how much you want? And he's like, I need a quart. And I'm like, whoa, we really are. Like, and
handle.
his CNA came in. And I was one of his favorite certified nurse assistants. And I was like, hey, Pops wants some tequila. He was like, he doesn't want dinner. He wants tequila. She's like, really, Pops? And so it was, we laughed. We had a good time. It was hard. The letting go was harder for us, of course. And then this part was so funny. He had always told me he was going to be stubborn and ornery. I mean, he told me that his whole life. He was a Vietnam vet. He was a football coach from Texas. He's like, I'm not going to make this easy on you. I'm like, well, thanks for the heads up, Dad. Appreciate it. So the day he is dying, and he had been like 3 days without eating or drinking. We knew he was doing a life review. We knew it was close. I was holding his hand, telling him it was okay. Oh, there were 2 funny stories. So hospice comes, gives him a bath. And he had not been ambulatory in a year. But anybody who's been with somebody who's dying, you feel them when they wake up or when they sit up. And so he'd had a hospice bath. I come back into the room and I feel him sit up. I'm like, oh, Dad, where are you going? And he goes, I'm heading home to have hot sex with my wife. I'm like, all right, Dad. And then at the very end, he starts his my mom and my sister and the kids had gone to dinner, and he starts his death breathing, and I call them back. And he's doing this for probably an hour and a half, and we're singing and we're praying and we're, we got all the stuff going. And then he falls asleep. I was like, oh, Dad, like you do. I was like, okay. And my mom took a nap and I sent everybody else home. And my dad was a farmer who loved flowers. He grew flowers, he grew food, fed his family. And he transitioned at midnight under the full flower moon.
Beautiful.
It was beautiful. It was just beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow.
I remember when my dad died, I was sitting with him as well, and hospice person came in, and I think a social worker, and said, take a break. You've been here for 2 days, basically.
Right.
And I said, okay, well, I'll go down and get something to eat. And just as soon as I got down to the cafeteria and I'd bought something, I get a call, you better come back. And he died while I was gone. And they said, this happens so often, I'm sure you've all experienced this, that they wait till their loved ones are out of the room. So people make that choice.
I think it also comes down to, and I might be wrong, but I think it comes down to like how okay the person is with letting them go, right?
Yeah.
Because my grandfather, I was at his feet. I often stand at the feet and have conversations with the person. And I was having a conversation with him, and I got very clearly that I needed to take my dad to lunch. And I took my dad to lunch, and that's when he passed away.
Yeah.
He needed my dad to be out of the room. So I think, I've done this. I was trained as a birth doula years ago. And I think the death doula is kind of the same thing, right? It means service.
Yeah.
Doula means service in Greek. And I always connect with the person's spirit and have a conversation and ask, like, what do you need? Or what what really is what you need, even the little ones that were coming in. Like, what do you need? What's going to make this easier, the coming or the going, right? Or ask them. Like I said to Dad when I was having a conversation, I was like, all right, Dad, like, come on now. What do you need? And I got really clear. I said, if there was anything unresolved, like you can send me a message, you can send me a sign. I'm okay to be listening for that. Like if there's something, I said, but you don't have to hang on to this body to do that. Like you can, it's okay to let go.
Yeah.
Good.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good
that
work.
makes a big difference.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you for
Thank
that.
you. Yeah.
Is
It's
there?
powerful work, but
Yeah, it is. It's one of the most sacred things I've ever experienced.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
Yeah. As you look toward your own death, is there anything you fear at the end of your life?
Oh, I don't know that it's fear, but it's more of I'm very clear how I want some things to go, right? Like I want the music, I want the hand holding, I
Yeah.
want and I don't think it's fear, but I wouldn't want to be alone. I mean, I think I'd be okay if I was alone, but I do want the whole kumbaya. Like I want my favorite playlist and I want my yeah. I think that I don't know, my youngest could totally do it. I'm curious about my husband and my daughter, like my oldest daughter, because they have different personalities, right? But I think I'm clear enough that I'm gonna be transparent with what I want or don't want. And even as I said that alone, I don't even think that's really a fear because I have such a good practice when I'm alone. Like because I don't feel like I'm alone. I feel like I'm with
Yeah.
spirit. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know that there is because I've been there at birth and I've been there at death. Like I know that there's more. And I don't
Yes.
know exactly what that more is, but I'm okay.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I know I can communicate on the other side. I think
Yeah.
that's the other piece of it, right? Is that I've
Right.
had those experiences of loved ones communicating with me. And so I'm like, okay. Maybe that
Yeah.
would be the fear is if I couldn't communicate
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
as a
Yeah.
communicator,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the line went dead.
right?
Right.
Right?
That would
Can you
suck.
hear me now?
Yeah. Tap, 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 tap. Morse code. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I actually believe that we'll be able to communicate. So, and my kids always tell me, like, make sure you try really hard. Just whatever it is, we'll know it's you.
Right.
Aw.
My
Yeah.
ex-husband always said, don't ever do that to me. I just might.
And now you're really going to do
Right?
that.
Right?
Yeah,
So,
I love that you're saying that you're mentioning all those things. And I think that's part of what we talk about too a lot is we have all of these wishes. We want to make sure the people who are going to be there know those wishes, especially if there's an issue around dementia, it could be sooner than later, right? But at any time, it's really important to. And I do a class and I tell people get all these things done as much as you can. It'll be a great gift to your family. Let them know exactly what you want, like all the details of what you can take, what they'll need to take care of, and then update it on a regular basis. You could do this when you're 18, right? And then keep doing it your whole life.
yeah.
Have a death party right after your birthday party to talk to everybody who's going to deal with your body, you know? So,
Right.
um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and back to the conversation we were having about my grandparents. So I think this was another thing that was so different from other people at that time. Both my grandparents donated their body to science. So
Oh,
we were
wow.
having to have those conversations as a family that were different than like, we didn't have we didn't do a cremation or a burial in the traditional way because their wishes were, especially with my grandfather for Alzheimer's, like that was part of their values is to have the scientific study. And so I hadn't even thought about that before this moment in this conversation. Like what an interesting conversation to be having back in the 80s
Yeah.
about death and wishes and what happens. And as a 14-year-old, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Wow.
fascinating. Like I really have not thought about that in years, y'all. Thank you.
Well, as we're thinking about all these little things around the end of life and you do the work, how are you keeping yourself resourced?
Oh, nature.
Yeah.
Right now,
Yay!
nature, right?
Number one
I
answer.
Number one answer.
I am so lucky. For my birthday one year, we built a labyrinth in my backyard. So I like to greet the sunrise and do meditation and walking meditations and and interplay. I like I mean I get paid to do the work that I love, right? And
Beautiful.
so I play and I connect and I'm doing more than ever as far as needing to resource myself, but thank goodness I have all those tools in my toolkit
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
really just connecting with the trees and reminding myself through them that incremental steps and things take time.
Yeah.
Yep.
and that I got some deep roots. So
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
piece of it, that when the wind blows, because man, it has, especially with grief and loss lately in my family,
Yeah. Yeah.
that we're still connected and we're still rooted, and we still, we can do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
I was hugging a 500-year-old fir tree yesterday and thinking what a great lesson that is in patience.
I met a cork tree recently in California. I don't think I'd ever met one before, and I was out in California and I met this ancestor cork tree. When you say fir tree, I was like, I think this cork tree was one of the oldest trees I'd ever met. It was delightful.
Yeah. Aren't we blessed for that?
We
That's
are
right.
so blessed.
Yeah. Like we said, that's the number one answer we get when we ask that question. Well, we're getting toward the end of the time now, and we always want to make sure we check with you. Is there anything you wish we had asked you? Anything else you'd like to share with us?
I just think remembering that when you're walking through this, whether it's for yourself or with other people, to really check in with your body. And what are you noticing in this moment? And that it may have changed, right? Like when you talk, Wakil, about updating it, like you may have had a certain and a set way that you thought it was always going to be, and things shifted or you shifted, and that it's okay to check in with ourselves and to change it. And it's okay to change it in the moment if something's not working. Like if we thought, okay, this was going to be the way it is, just to be really present. I think the being present and the checking it, going back to our body, like just going back and what do we need in this moment, both as caregivers or the person going through the process, what is needed in this moment.
Yeah,
I think
beautiful.
is one of the things I try to always be with.
Yeah, I love that. Octavia Butler says, God is change.
Another saint.
Another one of
Right?
our saints.
Absolutely.
Well, great.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah. Did you find your poem that you're going to share?
I did. I
Let's
would
hear
love
it.
to. It's a quote, actually.
Okay.
This
Perfect.
used to hang above my desk, and I think it's really appropriate when we talk about end of life or we think about it, right? And this is from Ralph Waldo Emerson. What is success? To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate the beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition. To know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is to have succeeded.
Wow.
I needed to hear that again. I remember interacting with that when I was in high school, and I think I used to have a photocopy of that for years, like on my desk. And I'm like, oh, I forgot I had that one. That's a good one.
That
I
is a
used
good
to
one.
have it above my desk when I worked at a social work agency.
That's,
y'all asked about what I'm afraid of, right? I often think like I have succeeded.
Yeah.
And, I want to be around for a long time, but I also live my life that if I needed to go today,
It's okay.
Right?
Yeah. That's
People
it.
that I love know that I love them. I tell them, I don't know if you've
Every
seen on
day.
social media where it says, make it awkward, tell your friend. Yep, that's me. I'm the colleague that hangs up with love ya.
Yep.
And I do my best to just be authentic and be present and know that, we don't know how much time we have. And I want to laugh and find joy and look for the good and acknowledge the stuff that's not working so I can stand up and be present to say no. But, I think we have to play with this life that we're given.
Yeah. Thank you. What a
Thank
beautiful
you for the
way to end.
reminder. Yeah.
Let's remember to play
Right?
in love and tears and all of it's all right. Everything's
Right?
good.
Play through it all and have fun.
Thanks so much for joining us on the End of Life Conversations. We appreciate you and look forward to sharing our stories. We encourage you to subscribe to have access to premium episodes and extra resources. Links to our guests and their recommendations and a transcript of this episode will be in the podcast notes.
Yes, thank you so much. And please tell all your friends. Follow us on social media, and again, consider subscribing for some excellent premium content. We want to acknowledge that the music we are using was composed and produced by Charles Heastand. We also want to acknowledge that we live on unceded lands that have been cared for thousands of years by Indigenous peoples who are still here.